Hey guys, it's Fida and today I've come up with an opera cake recipe. Opera cake is normally an almond sponge layered with coffee buttercream and coffee sugar syrup. It's super delicious and it is normally eaten in a pastry form, but if you want you can make it in a round shape also. It doesn't really matter at all. The cake that I'm gonna make today is gonna be in a pastry type and has 8 layers, which is alternated with the buttercream and the almond sponge. It's super delicious and hope everyone will try it. And if you want to see this video in Malayalam, I'll leave a link in the description down below to the other channel in which I upload the same recipes just translated into Malayalam. So let's get on to making it. First I have a bowl right here. I'm going to set a sift and sift in 3/4 cup of powdered sugar. This recipe requires powdered sugar. Once that's sifted, I'm also going to sift 1 1/4 cup of powdered almonds. These almonds were powdered at home. You can get it in any grocery store, but it's going to be like a white color. I powdered this at home so that it can match my coffee buttercream color. You can go ahead and buy it from any market. It's easily available, so it's just fine. Once that's sifted, let's set the sift aside and add in 5 eggs. Just use your whisk and mix it until well combined. Now that's combined well. Let's set this bowl aside. Next, here I have another bowl and I'm gonna add in 5 egg whites. Then I'm going to start beating this along with 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then once it gets to this slightly foamy consistency, you want to add in 2 tablespoons of sugar. Add it gradually. Once you've added the sugar, you need to continue beating until it comes to a stage of stiff peaks. Another thing to remember while whipping eggs are that you should never get a small bit of egg yolk into the white. Then it won't whip up perfectly. So then now it has come to a consistency of soft peaks. So continue beating until it comes to a consistency of stiff peaks. Now that's done, it has come to stiff peaks and I'm going to set this bowl aside. Brought back the almond, powdered sugar and the eggs mixture, just giving that one whisk. And I'm going to add in 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour along with 2 tablespoons of butter. I've mixed 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda into this flour mixture. This is optional. Opera cake doesn't usually consist of any baking powder or any leavener. It's just naturally because of the eggs, but once I made it, I found it a bit thick and the consistency of the cake was not that soft. That's the reason I'm adding it. It's totally optional for you. Once that's mixed in, I'm gonna add in the whipped egg whites. Now you should be very gentle and fold it very smooth. If you be too harsh with it, you're gonna deflate the air bubbles, then the cake won't be soft enough. Once you've slightly mixed the first batch, then you can go ahead and add the rest of it. Again, keep folding slowly, very gently, and add in the rest of it again. Now all of the egg whites are into this batter, so I'm just gonna fold it gently until everything is incorporated. And now the batter is done. You'll get a smooth ribbony type of consistency batter. I'm gonna set it aside and pour it into a pan. So here I have 2 rectangular baking pans lined with parchment paper. These pans are of the same size and I'm gonna divide the batter evenly into both of the pans. Then tap it quite a few times and then let's pop it into a preheated oven of 180 degrees for 7 minutes. Another thing, if you're baking the cake in one full pan, it might take a little bit more time, like 10 to 15 minutes, so you just need to adjust according to that. Then let's make the sugar syrup. Here I'm adding 1/3 cup of water along with 1/4 cup of sugar and 1.5 teaspoon of coffee powder. I'm just gonna give that a mix and dissolve it, and once it comes to a boil, I'm gonna off the flame and set it aside. By this time, my cake is ready. It's out of the oven. It's still hot, so I'm gonna let it cool completely and then we'll remove it from the pan. Next, I'm gonna make the coffee buttercream. For that, I'm adding in 3 egg yolks. I'm just beating that. Just beat it until it's nicely lightened in color, and then you can set that bowl aside. Next, take a pan, add in 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of sugar along with 1.5 tablespoon of water and 1.5 teaspoon of coffee. Then you need to dissolve that really well. Always mix it with a wooden stick. And now here it has started coming to nice boil. So there are a lot of bubbles. Then you can keep in your candy thermometer. And then you need to wait until the mercury of the candy thermometer reaches until 240 degrees Fahrenheit or 115 degrees Celsius. If you don't have a candy thermometer, there's another way to determine whether it's done. You can just add a small drop of this mixture into some cold water, and if this mixture gets crystallized, it's perfectly done, and you can pour it into the egg yolk mixture. Once it reaches to 240 degrees, you want to pour this into the egg yolk mixture. Gradually add it so that it doesn't form complete crystals. Then continue beating until this comes to a room temperature. The heat of the sugar and the water will get the egg yolks to cook, and at this point the egg yolks are going to be very hot, so you need to cool it down and then you can add your butter. If you add it when it is hot, the butter will start melting and won't reach to a buttercreamy consistency. So you want it to cool down completely. Just poke your finger in, and if it is no more hot and it is in room temperature, then you can go ahead and add the butter. Before that, let me just show you one thing. This is how you want it to be. So it has crystallized all over my bowl and the blades of my beater. So it should be in the sticky, crystally consistency. Then you'll know that it's done, and you can go ahead and pour it into the egg yolks. Now I'm gonna add in the butter once it comes to room temperature. So I have 140 grams of butter. This is unsalted butter, which is softened. Always need to use softened butter, so it will be a bit more easier. And you don't actually have to add so much of the butter. You can also add 100 grams and it'll work either way. It's totally fine if you lesser the butter's amount also. So that's ready. Let's set it aside and get on to assembling the cake. Before that, let's trim off the sides and take the cake out of the pan. Remove off the parchment paper. And I've trimmed off the sides. I'm just gonna cut this into half so that I get 4 layers. And then I'm gonna place it onto a cake board. and layer it with the sugar syrup and the coffee buttercream. I've brushed the sugar syrup on the other side of the cake. If you brush it on the side where you're applying the buttercream, because of the wateriness of the sugar syrup, the buttercream will start floating here and there, which will make it hard to frost it onto the cake. So you always need to brush on the sugar syrup on the opposite side where you're putting the buttercream. So I've done the same thing in this cake layer also, so that it doesn't slip and it'll make it easier to handle with. In this cake, in this slice of cake, I've put the sugar syrup on top, and you can see how it is slippy and it makes it more hard to frost. So you always want to put the sugar syrup on the opposite side of the cake. Once that's smoothened out, keep the other layer of the cake and frost the top. Let's set this in the refrigerator so that the buttercream sets really well, and then we can pour our chocolate on top. So you can see all the layers there. I've got 8 layers. I'm gonna keep this in the refrigerator, and now it's out of the refrigerator. I have some melted chocolate in a piping bag. I'm just gonna pour it on the top. You don't have to pour it on the sides because we're gonna cut off the sides. Then you need to keep this in the refrigerator for another 10 minutes so that it firms. The chocolate needs to firm. And then you can cut off the sides. Not too much, just a little, so that the layers can be seen. And that's how a pastry should be. So you can see all the layers. There are totally 8 layers alternating the buttercream and the almond sponge cake. And on top there's super delicious melted chocolate. So that's it, our cake is ready. Let's slice it and serve the cake. This cake will serve 4 people. And there you can see a delicious slice of cake. It's super delicious. I had also made another cake with the coffee buttercream and the almond sponge. This is also an opera cake itself, which I dripped off with some chocolate ganache. And then I also put on some chocolate decorations on the top. The video for these decorations will be coming soon. So that's it for the cake. That's a super delicious cake. Hope everyone will try it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you liked it. And if you did, please don't forget to give me a big thumbs up down below. Also subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Thanks once again, and bye-bye.